It's Wednesday, October the 30th, and we have a couple systems to watch in the tropics worldwide this week. We have Typhoon Kong-Rey in the West Pacific. This system is a very strong typhoon this morning and will be impacting the Philippines and Taiwan and parts of Japan as well as we go throughout the rest of this week. And we've also got an area of interest in the Atlantic to watch, though that will be at the end of the video, and we're really only going to be talking about Kong-Rey for the most part of this video. Now we've got Typhoon Kong-Rey, like I mentioned, here in the West Pacific this morning. A very large typhoon as it comes towards the coastline of the Philippines. You can see that over here on the western part of this map. It's really crawling westwards and northwestwards this morning, but progress it is, and it will be moving into these areas in the next day or so. And we're expecting significant impacts across a wide region of the Philippines up through Taiwan, into Japan, and even eastern parts of China as, like I mentioned, large typhoon. And that's very important for impacts because this means that the wind field is very expansive. It has always been in its life very expansive, but also that means it's pushing a lot of water. So especially in islands like here north of Luzon in the Philippines, this system is pushing a lot of water, and the storm surge could be very high here, even if we are having a weakening storm come through, and we are expecting some weakening to occur as this comes further northwest. But regardless, we can expect significant impacts that usually come with a very strong typhoon, and this is a very serious situation that everybody in the Philippines, northern Philippines that is, and Taiwan really need to be paying attention to and taking necessary precautions. Conditions are starting to deteriorate this morning in the Philippines. They will begin to deteriorate later today in Taiwan, and really today, if your preparations are not completed, they need to be rushed to completion. I'm talking about that weakening that we're expecting a little bit. Now, if we look at the overall environment around our storm, it's not actually too unfavorable. It's not forecast to change all too much from this favorable environment that it has this morning. We can see that there really is no signs of significant wind shear, perhaps maybe some signs of slight southerly shear. We do see some thunderstorms east of the storm having their tops blown off towards the north, though it's unclear if this is a shear or if this is more so from the southerly flow on the east end of our typhoon. But the most important thing is there's no strong shear here to impact our storm. And it's going to take a lot of shear to impact the storm significantly because it is so large. One aspect going for it is that larger storms tend to be more resilient against wind shear, and it will likely take a longer time and stronger wind shear than you would normally expect to weaken this system significantly. The main thing that's really going to cause the system to weaken is more so from the ocean. If we look at the ocean heat content, which is basically a measure of how deep do the warm waters extend below the ocean surface, we can see that right now it's over an area of enhanced ocean heat content, and these yellows and greens underneath it right now, underneath that 4 icon there. But as it moves northwest, we see it decrease down below 50, down to 25. And the issue is that the system is, like I said, large. And while it is resilient to shear, the issue with that is with its expanded wind field is it's churning up colder water in a greater radius. So once you have an area where it's moving into, where you have cooler water closer to the surface of the ocean, it can churn that up much quicker. And as a result of that, by the time the eye moves over that patch of water, it can easily be upwelled and too cool to sustain the thunderstorms it needs to keep itself strong. And through that, you can get weakening of the system as it moves through those cooler waters, or the waters rather that it cooled off. And this is likely going to lead to some gradual weakening as it comes northwest. Now, the key word there is gradual. We don't expect the system to rapidly weaken. We don't have much shear to help this water to weaken it, so weakening is not going to be very fast. So we could easily still have a very strong typhoon coming into Taiwan here. And the big concern, of course, is that, well, areas along the coastline could easily have very strong winds that could easily lead to several power outages, lots of damage along the coastline. Storm surge, like I mentioned, with it being a large storm, we have the enhanced risk of very high storm surge with this, but also the rainfall threat. This has a ton of moisture around it, and that's also another aspect of it being large. It has so much moisture surrounding it. And when you go up to a mountainous terrain like in Taiwan, all of that moisture is going to get pushed against those mountains and that, like a sponge, if you fill it up with water in the sink and you squeeze it, it's going to squeeze out that moisture into rain, and you're going to get a lot of rainfall in a short period of time. And that's likely going to lead to very significant flooding in Taiwan, not just from storm surge flooding, but also that freshwater flooding threat that we have. Now, in terms of track overall, there's not too much uncertainty now with the track. We are pretty locked in. The primary steering feature is this upper high, well, deep layer ridge rather, that's further east of our storm. It's on the western periphery on this. There is still a little bit of uncertainty on exactly how far north it may go, where it may landfall in Taiwan, and that primarily has an impact on the western end of this ridge. We have seen models like the GFS come a little bit north. You can see that's coming more into perhaps northern Taiwan, but we'll see how that happens. But the main thing here is that if it makes landfall in northern or southern Taiwan, it won't matter in terms of like wind impacts or rain impacts across the island. Storm surge, it may make a big difference, and that could absolutely increase a storm surge threat or maybe a typhoon force wind threat in the southern Japanese islands, but we'll have to see exactly how that happens. And those wobbles are more unpredictable even at this range of a day to day and a half from landfall. You can see that general range of the Pagasa forecast cone. You can see what I just talked about there, that little bit of uncertainty on exactly where does it make landfall in Taiwan, but regardless, very large wind field, going to be windy for a while here in the northern Philippines and Taiwan, and we can also expect significant impacts here in eastern China as the system does come further west and recurves. Now, it will be significantly weakened by the time it does come through Taiwan, but you could still have very strong winds, especially along the immediate coast, and this will also be still a large circulation pulling water right into these bay areas along this coast, and that could lead to some significant storm surge issues along that coast of China. That's all that I've got for Kong-Rey. Let's go to the Atlantic now, as we have one system to watch across the tropics. Now, overall, we are shutting things down for the season. We've got about a month left of hurricane season. It ends on November 30th. And overall, we are seeing the signs that the hurricane season is calming down. You can see in the tropical Atlantic, we have a lot of westerly flow aloft, showing us lots of wind shear out here. So this is keeping any tropical waves out there at bay, and I'd say this is probably shut down until next hurricane season. So the one area we do watch is the Caribbean, and we are seeing some hints at some activity here in the Caribbean over the next several days. And this is as the MJO pulse moves east. Now, what we've had, well, first I should explain what the MJO is, rather, is it's just a area of rising air in this green that you see here on this map that progresses east throughout the world. And this helps develop tropical cyclones because all this green is rising air, and you need rising air to contribute to thunderstorm activity. Now, this has been in the Pacific for the past couple of weeks. That's why we've had increased tropical activity in the West Pacific and the North Indian Ocean. But this is translating east over the next week, and you can see all this green here in the Atlantic and East Pacific showing rising air right over the Caribbean, where we watch this time of year. And just as you would expect, models are starting to show some chance of tropical development. Now, what's helping this in ahead of this pulse is an upper trough that's digging into the Western Atlantic today. You can see this on the analysis. If you focus on the green barbs, you can see this little kink in the line over the eastern United States. This is showing you that upper level trough axis that you can also see on the GFS here. Now, what this is doing is it's bringing a lot of moisture down from down way near the equator up north into the Caribbean. So we're getting a lot more convection to come further north. And as that happens, we begin to see low pressure development. And you can see this if we look at the GFS ensemble out to about 5 days. Now, this is where really our confidence starts to drop off quite significantly. There's a lot of uncertainty on exactly what this system may do, and the main issue is that this system is so broad. You can see that we have a broad area of low pressure on this ensemble, stretching from Central America all the way past Hispaniola, and even past that, we have an extended trough axis here into the Central Atlantic, which some models, the GFS included, is trying to show that this could try to spin up something. And so you have this whole area of vorticity or spin that's really uncertain. And if we don't have a precursor low, which right now we don't really have any area flow pressure in the Caribbean, it makes it much more difficult for models to get a handle on exactly what may happen because they don't know where an area flow pressure is going to form. So you can have a lot of different variability on exactly where lows form on certain runs. And so that's led to a lot of differing model runs, like where the GFS at times have had a strong hurricane coming through the Caribbean. Is that a possibility in this type of a setup? Absolutely. But is it the most likely scenario? Not so much. We've also had, from the same model, the GFS runs that have shown weaker storms that track northeast along this trough axis, and it remains weak as a tropical storm and moves into the western Atlantic and dissipates. And that is a very weak tropical system out of this setup. There's a wide array of possibilities onto what we could have here. And the most important thing is that regardless of development, heavy rainfall will increase across this entire region in the Caribbean, not just locked to Central America. We'll also have this across the northern Caribbean islands with this extended trough axis too that you see here. And so we could expect some localized flooding issues, especially in areas like Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, and Cuba with those mountainous terrains that you have in those islands. And even if you don't get a tropical cyclone forming out of that, you could still get those flooding issues. And if we do have a more significant threat out of this, of say a stronger tropical cyclone developing, we'll talk about that in due time when necessary. But as of right now, all we can say is that tropical development is possible, and HD currently gives us about a 40% chance of happening in the next week, which I generally agree with on their thinking. 40 or 50% seems about right to me on this system. That's all that I've got for this system and Kong-Rey. Stay safe as our storm comes through in the West Pacific. I'll probably have more videos out later this week on the system as it does track further northwest towards Taiwan in the Philippines. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.